That's right. It's Banter of Truth. Banter of Truth without Jimmy. We got only half the banter, really, because Jimmy's not here. Jimmy is in Europe, all over the place, flying around, taking trains, planes, automobiles, just without John Candy, right? Is that who's in planes, trains, and automobiles?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And Steve Martin, yeah.
Steve Martin, right. Good show. But you know what's better than Jimmy? Krista McDunn.
Hey, how's it going?
Get on that mic.
I'm right there.
Yeah, you can move it, you know.
I know.
You can like bring it down closer.
I guess
so
I
you can
could.
relax. You look really stiff.
All
See,
right.
now you're more relaxed.
Because now I was sitting up too tall.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. You've been working today.
I was working today.
Counseling people, helping people.
Day. Yep.
And now we get to hang out. We get to talk a little bit. And everybody wants you on. Everybody wants you to have your own podcast. Everybody wants you to do this on the regular. Yeah, you're not busy. Come on, do something.
No, I know.
You got lots of gas in the tank after.
Maybe someday. I don't know. We'll see.
After helping people with their burdens, process, get healthy.
There's a lot going on out there.
Man. Yeah, I don't know. That's I feel like it's a special person, a called person that does what you do, like professional counseling. Because I mean, as a pastor, I help people, I serve people, I do some sort of counseling, even not professional counseling, right? It's more like discipling and whatnot. But I know I feel the weight of that, and that that's what you do. That's everything. Right. That's a lot.
You have your own calling, obviously, that is also very heavy, in a different way. But yeah, it is. But I think when you are called to something like that, God gives you what you need to get through it.
Yeah.
That's my prayer every day is just give me what I need to help people. And he does. So, laboring with all his energy, right? Mm-hmm. That's the idea.
It's a good thing that he calls and equips and uses us beyond our abilities, because otherwise it'd be crashing and burning all the time. So we were going to get together. We were going to have a real fun talk. We were going to talk about leggings and lust. It's going to be so fun. We're going to do it too. If you guys want us to talk about #leggings and lust, let us know. And we'll bring Krista on and we will talk about that. But then everything got really dark and it felt like not the right time.
Nope.
To have a fun conversation about that. Not only do we have, the shooting that just happened, which is just wicked and evil and tragic and heartbreaking. We also have this Guidepost Solutions report that came out that everybody's talking about. And Jimmy is out of the country. I got COVID, so we've got a week missing when we couldn't really get to this really quick, and so this is the first chance we've had to really get into it. So for those of you who don't know, I would imagine all of our listeners know, or most of our listeners know, but there was a sex abuse task force that was created to investigate some accusations that related to the Executive Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention and how they handled allegations of sexual abuse. And this task force was called for, not from the platform of leaders at the Southern Baptist Convention last year. This was called for by messengers, regular church folk. Said, hey, listen, we've heard these accusations flying around, and we move that this task force be put together to do a thorough investigation. We want the task force to go in to do whatever they need to do. We want the executive committee to waive their attorney-client privilege so that we get all the information and everything, because we want to know what's up. So this came from our churches, which is a great thing. Mm-hmm. It shows courage. It shows conviction. And some of those high ups on the executive committee, they weren't so excited about. Well, they certainly weren't excited. Some of them were not excited about waiving attorney-client privilege.
I can see why now that I've read some things.
So, I mean, this has been dominating my Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. This is, 50%, I think, of everything that I see. There's some Bigfoot. There's some pop culture stuff, and then there's this. This is basically what it is. I guess there's also some classical theism stuff too going on. But this is dominating everything, and appropriately so, because what came out in a 280-page investigative summary report or whatever report is huge. If now we'll have links to this in the show notes, so you'll be able to read it if you haven't yet. You can download the PDF, and if you don't want to read all 200 and something pages, or you just can't, there is an executive summary, like there is at the beginning of any of these kinds of reports, and that's pages like 3 to 12 or something, and that will tell you basically what's in this report. So please read that if you haven't yet. So, Krista, I know you had a chance to look at this. What is your takeaway when you're looking at like what happened? How would you, if you had to explain this to somebody to the best of your ability, what did the executive committee do? Now, by the way, if you don't know what the executive committee is, the executive committee are basically our elected leaders who run the Southern Baptist Convention in between our annual meetings. Right? So they make sure the bills are getting paid, that the convention is operating in the way that it's supposed to operate according to the directions of our messengers. Right? So they keep things running. So they're moving things along. What happened? What's been going on according to this report?
Well, it looks like back in the early 2000s, there were people that came forward, women who came forward with concerns about sexual abuse when they saw, frankly, the people that abused them continuing to serve in churches and things like that. And so they went to the SBC executive committee, shared their concerns, wrote letters, emails, whatever kind of correspondence they could. And based on this report, members of the executive committee basically just kind of shoved it under the rug, just kind of brushed it aside.
And these were people that were not just reporting about cases of sexual abuse, but their own
it was their sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Exactly. They were the victim. It wasn't like, oh, I heard this happened. They were saying it happened to me. And then in the process not only was it brushed aside, but then as they continued to push, and I did not get a sense that it was out of retribution, out of revenge, out of being vengeful in any way, but more out of concern for other people. They did not want to see this happen to anyone else.
Right.
So they continued to push, and then it got really ugly for them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, here's the opening paragraph of the executive summary. For almost 2 decades, survivors of abuse and other concerned Southern Baptists have been contacting the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee to report child molesters and other abusers who were in the pulpit or employed as church staff. They made phone calls, mailed letters, sent emails, appeared at SBC and EC meetings, held rallies, and contacted the press, only to be met time and time again with resistance, stonewalling, and even outright hostility from some within the EC. So it wasn't everybody on the executive committee, but what this research shows, what this investigation shows, is that there were a number of people at the top of the executive committee who were basically fielding these calls and then shutting them down. They were, when things did go beyond them, they were antagonistic towards the victims, attributed their motives to Satan.
Right. Just horrible. When I was reading this, I was like, dang, the SBC has its own deep state.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me. We think of that in our own government. People talk about that, whether we do or we don't. It's a whole nother discussion. But that's what it seemed like, that there were this handful of people, including some lawyers, who were just making these decisions. And I was reading it and I was thinking, like, the president didn't get to weigh in on this. They didn't include them, and it details who was president at the time and, things like that. And sometimes they were informed, other times they weren't, it seemed like, or they were maybe told after the fact. I don't know. But it just felt really weird that it was just this handful of people and everyone else was in the dark. And as I was reading this, you talked about your Twitter feed and everything, and usually I feel like it's just a hot mess most of the time. I was reading this and I thought 2 things. Thank God for the Houston Chronicle, and thank God for Twitter.
Right.
Because these people were not going to be brushed aside anymore.
Right.
And they used the only means that were left to them. And now here we are. The messengers heard that, they saw that, and they said, enough's enough. We want to know what's going on.
And for me, that's that's the one good thing in this, is that because everybody's focusing on the bad, and the bad is really, really bad. This is horrific stuff. But the good is that this came about because messengers, that is, Southern Baptist church members who were at the convention last year, demanded that this happen. So this isn't like some, investigative journalist digging things up and surprising us all. We said, hey, something's going on.
Right.
We want to know what's going on. And so now we know, and now we have a chance to deal with it. How bad is it? Well, the report goes through, the mishandling of abuse allegations and the mistreatment of victims. They're very specific. They give examples. They have emails. It's really bad. One of the surprising things, and a lot of it's not surprising because we had heard of some of this stuff.
Right.
Some of it's surprising. All of it's grievous. But for me, when I was reading this the first time through, I was like, Johnny Hunt? Johnny Hunt was the president from 2008 to 2010. And he's a big deal in Southern Baptist life. He's a well-respected, little fiery preacher guy, and I don't mean that dismissively. He's like me. He's short, and he's animated, and his name is associated with seminaries and programs and schools and all of this. So he's loved by Calvinists and non-Calvinists, even though he's super, anti-Calvinist. He's, by general consensus, Johnny Hunt, good guy.
Yeah, he was well respected.
And during this investigation, they got a report that Johnny Hunt had sexually assaulted a woman, a wife, back in 2010. And the reason they included this in the report is because they found in their investigation that the wife and her husband were credible. The report was corroborated in part by a counseling minister, 3 other witnesses. And the investigators did not find Dr. Hunt's statements related to this sexual assault allegation to be credible. So that, on top of everything was already bad and horrible, now we have not just leadership mishandling allegations, but potentially being perpetrators of sexual abuse. And so I'll tell you, if you read the summary here, the executive summary, it's discouraging. If you bother to read the whole thing, the details are just going to be overwhelming for some of you. So for some of you, it might not be the greatest thing, because they're trigger warning, right? For real.
I was so angry earlier today when I was reading it. I was glad I saw clients that helped me calm down.
You can actually put your hands on people metaphorically and help them, right?
Well, I was like, it channeled my thinking a different way.
So we have, these allegations of mishandling, or the mishandling of abuse allegations, the mistreatment of victims, and they were, the way they talked about the victims, in-house, and the way that they really shut down communication with them so as to avoid potential litigation, as if, frankly, as if covering our butts is more important than taking care of people who are in need.
That's exactly what I thought. And using the excuse of, well, they don't understand our polity. That's what I kept reading, right? They don't understand our polity. And it's like, okay, great. So we're this group of churches who are independent and self-governed that come together to do great things like support missionaries and plant other churches, which is great. So I'm all for that decentralization. That's awesome. But we can band together to do great things. But now you're using that very thing that's supposed to be for good to not take care of the very people that you're supposed to be serving.
Yeah.
That infuriated me to read that this is the reason you're giving. That's why we can't do anything.
The idea, like, well, we can't, I remember there was the thing was like, well, why don't we get a database? We'll get a database and we'll just collect anytime we see, a pastor, minister, whatever, charged with sexual abuse or whatever. We got a database and we keep that thing fresh, and that way our churches can know. It's another way of, and the response from, some in the EC were like, well, that's impossible. It's unrealistic. Churches are autonomous. We really can't do that. And the whole time,
except they did.
They did that very thing. For 10 years, they had over 400, I don't know what it was, approximately 400 names.
700 victims.
Okay, yeah. 700 victims.
Unbelievable.
And approximately 400 names, I forget, of people. They maintained it for 10 years. They maintained it for 10 years, but never did anything with it. And every once in a while, they would say like, well, maybe we should, but we're not going to do anything about it.
It makes me sick
to
think about.
The lying, the gaslighting, all of it is really frustrating. And I know, people look at this and the world, of course, is outraged. When it happened, when you saw what was happening in the Catholic Church, right? And you watch movies like Spotlight.
Oh my gosh! And I remember feeling just as outraged.
Yeah, this is
no different.
But I'm not Catholic. I'm doctrinally, we're anti-Catholic. We're Protestants. But it's like you're supposed to be helping. You're supposed to be protecting.
And these are image bearers.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh.
And the task of protecting people is built into it. I'm actually, I got sick, so I couldn't preach the sermon I was scheduled to preach on, which is Acts 6 and what I believe is the Proto-Diaconate, right? When the deacons were created, because there were some members of the church, right? These Hellenist widows. So there was a group who was being mistreated. They were not being cared for. And when it came to the attention of the apostles, they're like, all right, we got to deal with this because we're the church. And we take care of each other.
That's what we
right?
do.
We care for those who are overlooked, oppressed, and we want to help. And so we're going to put together a team of people to address this specific need. So I'm actually, in God's providence, I couldn't preach on that. This came out. And so you can bet I will be talking about this report during this sermon because it is related.
Right.
We failed as a convention to do one of the things that we're supposed to do as a church or as a convention of churches.
Well, yeah. And you think about, who would Jesus be standing with?
Yeah.
These committee members that are worried about the organization's reputation being sullied or having to lose money in lawsuits or something like that? Or would he be standing with the people that have been victimized? I think Jesus would be standing. I think he'd be flipping some tables over.
I think he'd be, you know what I mean? Jesus showing up at an executive committee meeting at some point back in the day, I think it would have been a dramatic experience. And I know people use that a lot, like, Jesus would turn over tables, and they apply it to a lot of things, but it certainly applies here. Think of all of the passages throughout Scripture where God talks about his heart for the oppressed, for the widow, for the disadvantaged, for people that he expects the people of God in particular to be caring for. And it's why he sends judgment to Israel again and again. It's like, oh, you know what? You're mistreating the wife of your youth. So guess what? Oh, your shepherds are mistreating the people. So here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
So like, this is really significant stuff. And as we're kind of looking at this report, and the world is watching and talking about it. And of course, great. Now they have another opportunity to say, see, hypocrites, liars, fakes, and phonies, which, is somewhat fair in some measure and not fair in other ways. Like I said, the investigation was launched because we demanded it, right? So that's good. But then the church looks at this, and we, a lot of people are starting to ask, well, then what do we do? Should we just leave? Is the Southern Baptist Convention, so corrupt that there's no saving it? Like some people think like, oh, we need to leave the SBC because it's too liberal or woke or whatever. Other people think they need to leave the SBC because it's not reformed enough. And now we've got a whole bunch of people saying maybe we need to leave the SBC because it's immoral.
Right.
It's just, it's unrighteous because of how victims, like the most vulnerable people who have experienced the most significant form of trauma somebody can experience, right?
Right.
Sexual abuse. Maybe it's time to just walk away and join something else. I mean, do you feel that? Do you feel like that sort of tension?
When I first heard about it, before I even read this, when I saw people summarizing on Twitter and things like that, to be honest, my first thought was like, okay, are we out? Because I know you guys, you're not okay with this, And I know that we are with missionaries. We love to plant churches. We do that whenever we can. And I'm sure our affiliation with the SBC has made that possible, the ones we have planted. And all of that's so good. But are we literally going to sacrifice people,
right,
for those good works, like in this way? That doesn't seem okay.
Right.
And so, that was my first thought, like, we're out, right? But then my second thought was, wait a minute. Yes, we could be, but we also could stick around a bit and see if we could help fix this, if it's fixable. And, and not just, cut bait and run kind of an idea, and I think you bring up a good point. The fact that the messengers demanded this means there are significant numbers of us across our nation who have said enough, and we're not okay with this. This is not what's happening at the local level. And why are you, this is not okay.
I think, like we left Acts 29, not because Acts 29 was corrupt or anything. It didn't fit anymore for us. It was just, we didn't really, I like the guys in Acts 29, but it just didn't seem to be a partnership anymore. So we're like, well, we'll just cut those ties, and God bless them and God bless us. But that took years for us to make that call. And, even as an SBC church, I mean, I've been Southern Baptist since 94, and been in Southern Baptist churches since. And I'm grateful for the SBC, every church that I've planted, that we've sent out, all SBC. And we still have always, evaluated, like, are we going to stay SBC? Because it's not just once in, always in. It's like, no, we're in. And then if they get in the way of what God's called us to do, then we're out, or if it goes off the rails. And it's never been an urgent thing. Like, we need to make up our mind right now, because it's been like, well, it's a big tent. There's disagreements.
Right.
There's really good stuff. There's some bad stuff. Things change. And I've seen things change. Some really good things happen. But this is very significant in that it's not like, is there the possibility of drift? Are there some parts that where there's some bad doctrine, and then what's our recourse and how do we deal with it? All of that's important, but this is heinous sin that was committed by leadership, and so it does warrant a lot of attention and some really sober thinking. I think that I'm crafting a statement on behalf of the elders, and then all the elders will look at it, so we'll all have a chance to take a swipe at it. But we're putting together a statement that might be released by the time this drops. I don't know. And for our church, right? So that everybody knows, like, hey, listen, here's where we're at. Here's what we're thinking. Because we know some of our people are going to have thoughts. I mean, everybody's going to have thoughts about the report. And some people are going to want to probably say, like, hey, we don't want to be in the SBC anymore. And so we want to shepherd our people through that, and help them to, be patient, right? As patient as we can be, hopeful, but also, we're going to be strategic. And there's no sense in which we're going to stay in a convention that won't do the right thing.
Right.
We won't do that. And so this next convention, I'm going to be there. Jimmy's going to be there. I don't know if we have any other messengers going. It'll be in California. So yeah, we're going to be there in Anaheim in June. So it's going to be
something.
We've got 3 guys running for president, and no offense, it's really 2 guys. It's going to come down to Tom Askell and Bart Barber. And there's just going to be that the presidential race in and of itself was going to be, I think, somewhat contentious. Now with this, I mean, we're going to have to deal with this. I don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to see resignations? It's not going to be a pleasant one. Oftentimes they are pleasant. Sometimes it's a mix. This is going to be a hard one.
It's going to be heavy.
There should be some real lamenting.
Yep.
And a lot of people are calling for that. I don't know if you've seen that. They're saying, like, hey guys, why don't we chill on all the celebration stuff?
No, the rah-rah stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
like, read the room.
Lose it.
Let's get serious and sober, repent and pray, and then chart a path forward.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping to see, some very specific steps.
Yeah. Well, Guidepost really made some recommendations.
Yeah. Okay. And I didn't get that far. I need to read that. And that's what I would like to see, hopefully if they've got the database, then, well, great.
They're supposed to release that tomorrow.
Yeah. And we've got something to start with. So, get it in the hands of people who are really good with that kind of stuff, and let's go, and now we have it. But even just, and I get that at a national level, that maybe that isn't the place to go for help, right?
Right.
It, in terms of, we have someone that has suffered this way, what do we do? Okay, so a national organization can give guidance, like, this is what we recommend. Here's the steps you should take. This is who you should contact. These are the people that you should involve, law enforcement, counselors, whatever. That's all good. But in terms of expecting people at a national level to deal with that, no. To me, it's always stunning. Like, why weren't police, like, some of the first people that were called.
Yeah. And
it's criminal activity.
And it's like, we're talking 2000. We're not talking 1979.
Right.
And again, that doesn't excuse it. But you go back, like John MacArthur's church in like 1980 something, like, there's allegations that they didn't go to the authorities when they should have. And they should have. And it's easy for me to say I would have, but that wasn't like as known. It wasn't as established as it should be in the minds of people.
Right.
Sexual abuse wasn't even talked about it like it is today back then.
And I imagine one of the things are like, wait, this is a quote unquote dispute between fellow believers. We're not supposed to go to the civil authorities not. No, this is criminal behavior.
Right.
This is civil law violation.
Yeah.
This isn't church law violation. I mean, yes, morally, yes. But
you can deal with the church stuff.
Yes, but this is beyond that.
State bears the sword for a reason, Paul says in Romans. So let them wield it.
Right.
I don't. So and that's not giving anybody a pass. Please don't misunderstand me. As listeners who've been listened long, know that I was sexually abused as a kid. So I'm sensitive to this stuff. It bothers me. There's a personal level. I'm sympathetic towards people that are in this empathetic. I'm not saying that, because it was in the 70s or 80s, nobody knew better. I think we did know better. But by 2000, the principles were so clearly established. There was no question. And listen, we have had to deal with this stuff, in my ministries where here's a credible accusation, and we've had to deal with it. And we call the authorities, we get everybody involved. We don't, and that's not pat on the back. That's just what you're supposed to do.
Normal procedure.
That's what else am I? There is no other option.
Right.
I'm going to sit people down and try and keep it quiet. Now you're going to forgive your abuser, and your abuser's really sorry. And it's that's not right. That's not the path forward.
You know what? I even get the whole, given even what's gone on in our nation in the past 5 years with, Supreme Court nominees being accused and things like that. And people were saying, believe all women.
Right.
Okay. I'm a counselor. Maybe I shouldn't even say this out loud, but I'm not for believe all women, because guess what? Sometimes people do make false accusations.
Of course.
But investigate all allegations or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. That I'm for.
Take them seriously.
Absolutely. Believe the person when they're telling you enough to be like, we will look into this.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. And if they find credible things, then great. If they don't, then all right, fine. And we can move on from there.
It's interesting.
But you can't be afraid of looking for the truth.
Right.
Do not be afraid of the truth.
Yeah, let it play out. It's interesting because, not that long ago, how long ago was that? Believe all women.
Oh, gosh. Was that 2017, 2018?
Okay,
I don't know. When was
ago.
that? No. I mean, It was during the Trump administration.
Who believes Amber Heard?
I don't. Not many.
Not many. No. Now listen. I'm not saying she's lying. I'm not saying Johnny's innocent. I'm not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there seems to be a bit more common sense in this moment, at least with that trial, where it's not just just believe whoever makes the claim. It's let's look at the claims. Let's look at the evidence. But you have to take it seriously. And that means that. It's a mess. I know a guy. He was a deacon, and not in any church that I planted, but I know a guy who was a deacon who was accused by a high school student of touching her and going after her, and it was taken very seriously. And thankfully, praise God, she admitted pretty quickly that no, I made it up. It was.
Oh man!
And this kid had kid had a lot of issues, and so there was kind of a thought okay, let's they didn't roll their eyes, they didn't dismiss her, but they kind of thought she's troubled and she's got some
needs
issues.
help. Yeah.
So let's look into this and be careful here. And then she did admit it, but you can't just assume.
No.
And you have to take there. Yes, there's going to be a hit, and I guess that's the problem, right? If I take it seriously. And it has to be somewhat public at some point, right? There's been an accusation made, right. So we're investigating. Then doesn't that damage the person's reputation? And it certainly does in the world.
Right, because in that sense, I've thought, we both have sons, and I've thought about my son and thought, okay, we're in a guilty until proven innocent scenario right now for guys in a lot of cases. And so, as the mother of a son, I'm concerned about that. I absolutely think we should take all allegations seriously. You should look into them, but we shouldn't jump to the conclusion that it's absolutely true. I mean, I've kind of always been a skeptic in that sense, like mainly because I didn't want to be gullible and stupid and just fall for anything, so it's for my own, whatever. But yeah, I think we should believe it. We should look into it, believe it enough to look into it and investigate it, but yet not to the point where we're like, oh, that jerk or scumbag or whatever, he did it. No, we got to find out.
And then follow it all the way through.
Absolutely.
If this person is found to be innocent, then you have to make this super clear. These accusations were shown to be false,
public,
not credible. This person, and you have to hold them up and defend them and reestablish them. And if they're guilty, then don't sweep it under the rug. And this is one of the most troubling things that you see in this study, this task force that they uncovered, and that we've seen, exposed, in by other investigative journalists and whatnot, is that someone will get caught doing the wrong thing, and they'll, just like in the Catholic Church, they just get moved on to another church. Like, oh, we'll just get out of here.
To me.
We'll plug you in somewhere else. And the idea that, I mean, are the people in charge, are the leaders in charge in that situation where somebody gets caught doing something or accused of doing something, so they just move them out and plug them in somewhere else so they can keep doing their thing? Do they legitimately not believe the accusation? Are they so blinded by their friendship or their loyalty that they've lost any sense of justice? Or do they know, okay, this guy did something, but God's going to use him anyway, so I'm just going to move. What's going on in their head?
I have no idea.
You're a counselor. Explain that to me.
Oh my gosh, I can't. I literally can't.
I need some answers.
Because I'm thinking like you. I'm like, these guys have, I assume they have kids. I would just say daughters, but there's an account of a male being abused. So this isn't just about women, and they have daughters and sons. They have grandchildren, I assume, right? They have wives. I mean, I don't understand it. And so I don't know if it was like the Catholic Church where, dioceses literally, they do move people around.
Right.
Even not in abuse cases, like that's what they do. Yeah. They move them around. They have control over that. In this case, I don't know if they were specifically taken from one church and put in another, or if they were just allowed, we're not going to say anything, so you're free to roam about the country.
Well, some of them got help. They got help. They got letters written. Okay. They got endorsements or whatever.
And see, that I don't understand it. And if they knew and then also and still let it happen.
Yeah, it's
anything
really
that anybody ever said about any of these celebrity pastors, you don't get to say it anymore then.
Yeah. Because
I'm sorry, it's just as bad.
And it is, it's strange for me because I'm seeing people. I'm seeing some people interact with the report, and most people are upset and they're like, "This is really wrong." Some people are instead like finding side issues and like side issues related to the report, and they want to know well, how come this isn't being addressed? Or in other words, they miss the forest for some of the trees. Mm-hmm. They're so focused on a couple of things. It's like your lack of grief, your lack of clarity in denouncing this is troubling when you're focusing on other issues that need attention, sure, but at this very moment, we really just need everybody to come together to focus on what's most important, prioritize,
right,
and work things out in a logical manner. We definitely need a strategy here. I had a question for you. What do you think is behind some of the way that these people function? These leaders that would demonize victims, blame them, dismiss them, hide it. Is it misogyny? There's a lot of people see this is just misogyny. They hate women. They don't like women. Is it something else? Is it is it misanthropy? Do they hate everybody? I mean, is it a mix?
Yeah, I think it could be any of those things, a combination of them. Some of it. The other thing I was thinking about as I was reading this and realizing the scope of the organization, nationally and things like that, the whole idea, and we have seen this, right? When with celebrity pastors, that they were surrounded by people who became, whether they were yes men to begin with,
right,
it remains to be seen. I don't know, but they became yes men because of the whole idea of, hey, this is too big to fail.
Yeah.
This ministry is doing too much good. We can't lose this guy because of the greater good. And the larger organizations get, whether they're churches or something like the SBC or companies or whatever, the bigger the danger is of that happening. So there's that element, I think, that comes into play. Like, oh, we can't let this get out because it'll sully our name, it'll tarnish us, and we are really trying to do good. Can we somehow just kind of take care of this on the side? I think there's that. But I do think there may be pride, there may be power issues, at play. But I gotta admit, when I see some of these women, and I'm not a feminist. I'm a complementarian. I don't, I'm fine with that. But when women are being discussed as causing men to stumble regularly, being emotional and not in control of their emotions, seen basically as problems or that they need to be managed. I'm sorry. I'm starting to think like, I think that's got to be part of this somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not quick to say that. I'm really slow to say that, but I can't help it anymore. I'm kind of done.
I think for me, when I think through this, I do think the central sin and I guess this would apply to every sin, but when I look at leaders doing this, the central sin seems to be pride. They are self-important. They have to come first. Their priorities have to come before everything else. And then it manifests itself in different kinds of sins, right? Some people become, predators, and abusers themselves.
Right.
Other people aren't, but they are misogynistic. There are men who hate women, and there are women who hate men. Like that's
absolutely.
But I think we're a little too quick to just dismiss, like, oh, I'm not a misogynist. Stop it. Like that guy's not a misogynist. It's like, well, okay, you say like that guy's not a racist. Okay, well, here's what he said. Now, is what he said racist? Is that a racist thing? Was it a joke? Was it a racist joke? Was it a racial joke? What does his history demonstrate? What do his actions demonstrate? I think after a while you can go like, well, based on all the evidence that I see, the guy looks like a racist, or the guy looks like a misogynist, looks like he hates women. The way he treats and interacts with people, it shows a devaluing of a person, whether it's because of their gender or their ethnicity or whatever. Right. I think you can, if you have the evidence, you should be able to clearly say like, well, I think that's a fair statement. So I think we're really quick as Christians to be like, oh, well, they're a Christian, so they can't be a racist, or they're a Christian, therefore they can't. And it's just, no. That's not how it works. Christians commit all kinds of sins, and we get turned around in our theology, practically speaking. And so, yes, you can be a Christian who is a racist. Now, are you being Christian in that? No, you're not. But it doesn't mean that you don't have faith. It just means that your faith is corrupt at that level. Right. So we still have to deal with it. We still have to root it out. We still have to try to understand it. And I think when we're looking at this, I think we need the solutions, the protocols. I know that they just established a hotline that people can now call. They just released that. That's cool. And some people are saying, well, don't call them because they're just going to, do the same thing again. But it's actually being operated by Guidepost. So hopefully that's different then. Yeah. It's good. So I think we're starting to make some good steps, even in the days immediately following this release. But I think we need this. We need the protocols. We need the structures. But like anything, we need to deal with the heart. So we need
Absolutely.
both. We need both. I want us to put things in place to keep people safe practically. We need guardrails and bumpers and all that stuff. But we also need to address the heart issues, which is how we look at each other, how we relate to each other, accountability.
How we talk about each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of it.
And yes, it does. Yeah, it always comes down to the gospel, right? Of course. But the gospel properly understood, specifically applied, and then really like lived out with the application of God's law, of his ways. And so I'm hoping that throughout this summer and into Anaheim, and then moving forward, we see some real change. But there's I don't know.
Yeah. And all those things you talk about, like all the protocols and the things like that, to me, doing those, it could be one of two things. You're doing it because you feel like you have no choice because the national media has grabbed this and stuff. Or it could be a signal that we really mean this.
Yeah.
Our hearts are in the right place. We do really want to do the right thing. And I think, frankly, part of how we can tell how this is going is are people doing this willingly and with a repentant attitude, even if they personally did not do this.
Right.
But because we're a part of this organization, we feel the weight of this and we're acknowledging that. And so, yes, we are open. We are listening. What do we need to do? Or are they fighting it, kicking and screaming the whole way?
Yeah. Well, like we talked to Pastor Adam Wyatt. He's pastor of Corinth Baptist Church. And we talked to him, back in 2021. He's a member of the executive committee. Mm-hmm. And so we had him on the podcast to talk about what this controversy was all about initially, and waiving privilege and all of that. So I've talked to people on the executive committee. I know that there are godly people there that want to do the right thing, that
Absolutely.
we're for this. Let's waive the privilege. Let's get the facts. Let's find out what's going on. So I want to encourage people to, do not make the mistake that the world makes, right? The world sees a corrupt church and they go, churches are corrupt.
Right.
Or they see a bad pastor and they go, see, you can't trust Christians. They're all hypocrites. And like you hear that and you go, that's not fair. Don't blame Jesus or don't blame the church for what some people are doing.
Exactly.
And it applies here too.
Absolutely.
The SBC as a whole is not corrupt in that way, but we definitely have some corruption and we need to deal with it. And I think we are dealing with it. And so I'm hoping that there is brokenness and repentance and a willingness to do the right thing. I'm hoping that there is real revival, and that's something that I think everybody who's running for president in the SBC wants. We need
Mm-hmm.
revival in our hearts, in our convention. So that's a good call. I'm hoping that we have really good days ahead of us, and that we don't have to leave the SBC, but it's always on the table. Like, our church is Southern Baptist for as long as that's a good thing. And if it's no longer a good thing, then we will no longer be. And because our identity is not found in the Southern Baptist Convention, our identity is found in Christ.
Absolutely.
And we're a part of his body. So, hey, Krista, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We like having you on. Everybody likes having you on. So you come on, you got your wisdom. You don't talk over me and like Jimmy does all the time. You don't steal my thunder.
We miss you, Jimmy.
We do. Jimmy. I'm like, Jimmy and I are going to be at we keep getting these messages. You guys are going to be in Anaheim? Yeah. Where are we smoking? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It'll happen. They're like, we'll be somewhere, but it's going to be a busy one. So, listen, this is All Access. Now, we're making this available to everybody this week because we got Krista on and we're talking about the report, the Guidepost Solutions, independent investigation thing. But listen, if you want to support Doctrine and Devotion, subscribe to All Access. It's a way that allows us to continue to do what we're doing. And you can subscribe by just scrolling down on your podcatcher. Look for the link that says support the podcast. Click that. You can sign up. It's like $10 a month. Or you can go to doctrineanddevotion.com/allaccess and sign up there. We got our podcasts regularly dropping on Mondays and Thursdays. So get it there. You can go to the website, doctrineanddevotion.com. And if you're looking for hoodies or t-shirts, things like that, you can go to jofostore.com. If you want to follow Krista on social media, what is it?
What is my handle? I think it's just at Krista McDunn.
Really? Is it really?
I think so.
That's pretty good. I'm going to look it up right now.
I think it is.
At Krista. Look at that. At Krista McDunn.
There I am.
He's not like Jimmy. He's got numbers and stuff in his.
I got like a handful of followers.
Krista McDunn. Look at that. Oh, look. She's got her showing her neck tattoo in that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, she doesn't have that. Thanks for listening, guys. And we'll see you. Listen up on Thursday. We got another interview dropping.